Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, including the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As we greet you on this, the 11th day of the month of Jumadi al-Akhirah, in the year 1446, corresponding to December, I don't know, I think 14 of the year 2024, is it? 24.
Gregorian calendar.
You see how I'm forgetting their system of time? And we greet you from, excuse me, I have a cough. So we greet you from Shah Alam, close to Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And today we're going to do what you've been waiting for more than 1 week, more or more. All around the world, people have been waiting for us to respond to the events in Syria. And I am honored to have with me my friend and brother, my learned brother, Dr. Olsi Jazexhi, who lectures at the International Islamic University in Malaysia, and who is an expert on Ottoman history. And we are planning, he and I, to have a one-day session in Malaysia in the month of May, I hope, which will be fascinating. Fascinating. We will look at the history from the time of the beginning of the Zionist movement in 1897 until the First World War, and look at that period of history and teach that period of history with a man who has the expertise that I don't have. But today, we're going to concentrate on what has happened in Syria. And you'll have to excuse me, I will do less of the talking because of my cough, and we have to ask Dr. Olsi to do most of the explanation. But he will want to also go back in the background of what has happened, and that is where he has his expertise. So let us begin with Allah's blessed name, and I want to invite Dr. Olsi now to give his introductory comments on the subject.
Okay, Sheikh Imran, thank you very much for inviting me, and I would like to salute all our viewers. And what happened in Syria in the last few days is one of those moments which you have probably foreseen to come. The unbelievable happened. But before going into what is happening at this very moment, let me make a quick review of history of Syria. After the defeat of the Ottoman Empire during World War I, Syria will be colonized by the French. And when the French, under General Henry Garraud, when they will enter in Damascus, Henry Garraud will go to the grave of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. He will go there, he's going to spit on the grave and will tell to Saladin, awake because we are back. So what the British and the French did is that when they invaded Syria and Palestine and the Arab world, with their secret agreement known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they divided the Arab world, and Syria became a French colony. Under French colonization, Syria was divided into 6 states. The French used the tactic of divide and rule, so they created the state of Damascus, the state of Aleppo, an Alevi state, a Druze state, and then they created the state of the Greater Lebanon. Lebanon was designed in a way so that it will become a Christian majority and dominated by the Maronites. But then we know the story. We have the Second World War, where Germany will try to fight and take back what it was taken from her during World War I. And because of World War II, and because of the great clash between Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, the Germans will be defeated. And then after World War II, we'll have the establishment of a new world order. Russia, which during World War I will be decimated by the Bolsheviks, now under the leadership of Stalin, who is going to remove the Jewish Bolsheviks from power, will emerge as a major global superpower. And under the leadership of Stalin, we will see the emergence of many independent Muslim nation states. We will see the independence of Egypt, of Syria, of Lebanon, of Jordan, of Yemen, of Sudan, and whatever. Now, when World War II will finish, the Zionists, who they already had planned and they had started their Zionist project since 1917, in 1948 they will declare the establishment of the Jewish state. The establishment of the Jewish state will start with the Nakba, will have massive killings and rapings and deportations of Palestinians, where the Zionist mafia, supported by the United States, will deport from Palestine more than 750,000 of Palestinians, be them Muslims or Christians. The declaration of the State of Israel in May 1948 will lead to the first Arab-Israeli war. And the newly created state of Syria is going to join the war on the side of the Palestinians and other Arab nation states. Of course, as we know the story, the Americans, the Zionist lobby, Czechoslovakia, will come to the help of the first Jewish state, and Israel will prevail, or at least will come into a stalemate with its Arab neighbors. And then we're going to have the second Arab-Israeli war in 1956, the third in 1967, and the fourth in 1973. The war of 1967 will be a great disaster for Muslims, because while Israel will be established in almost, I'm not sure, but almost 60% of historical Palestine, during the war of 1967, Israel is going to invade West Bank, which in this time was part of Jordan, the Golan Heights, which were part of Syria, and Gaza, which was part of Egypt. And from the year 1967 to this day, even those Palestinians who were deported from what we know nowadays as Israel into West Bank and Gaza will become slaves of the Zionist state. They will live under an apartheid regime. But in all these wars, Syria will stand on the side of the Palestinians. After the third Arab-Israeli war, when the Zionists, they will capture even Masjid al-Aqsa, will have hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who will be deported towards Jordan. From 1967 to 1970, the Palestinians, they will continue their resistance from Jordan, but in the year 1970, King Hussein, in collaboration with Americans and Israelis, he will declare war on Palestinians, and he
What about Pakistan?
Pakistan is too far. So, no, because I want to come...
General Zia-ul-Haq was there.
Yeah, but no, I want to come to Syria.
Oh, go ahead.
Because in 1970, when Jordan will massacre the Palestinian resistance, will have Syria under Hafiz al-Assad, which is going to put the Syrian army inside Jordan to help the Palestinians. But threatened by Israel, they will have to withdraw. Because I want to show the role of Syria here. And then we will have the removal of the Palestinian resistance from Jordan, and they will be relocated to Lebanon. So from 1970 to 1982, Lebanon will become like it is today under Hezbollah, the center of resistance. And Israel is going to attack Lebanon, is going to invade, and finally in 1982, Ariel Sharon is going to surround Beirut and will force the Fedayeen of the PLO and other Palestinian organizations to leave Lebanon. But in this time we have Syria, which is always standing on the side of the Palestinians. During the Fourth Arab-Israeli War of 1973, Syria is again going to fight against Israel and join Egypt of Anwar Sadat. But after the Camp David Accords of 1978 and the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty of 1979, when Sadat is going to sell the Palestinian cause, Syria will not sell the Palestinians. And after the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, which will last until 2000, it will be Syria which is going to support the Palestinian resistance, and it will be under the supervision of Hafiz al-Assad that in 1982, after Israel will think that they defeated the Palestinian resistance, that Imam Khomeini will create the Hezbollah. And Hezbollah will be supported not only by Iran, but also Syria of Hafiz al-Assad. And Syria, until 27th of November 2024, which means how many days before? Today is 14, which means, help me, 17 days or 18 days before, was the last Arab country neighboring Israel, which was in a state of war with Israel and never signed peace with Israel. And what will happen is that after the establishment of Hezbollah in 1982, Syria will become a very important Arab nation state which is going to stand and support the resistance for the liberation of Palestine. Now, with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, George Bush I, the father of the second George Bush, will announce in the US Congress on 11 September 1991, after they will defeat Iraq during the first Gulf War, that the Americans will establish a new world order.
A what?
A new world order. And in his speech in front of the US Congress, George Bush will declare that we no longer have a stalemate when it comes to the United Nations because the Soviet Union is not there. And the time came for the Zionist America to shift its war from the war against communism to the war against Islam. And after the destruction of Iraq during the first Gulf War, and after the infamous speech of George Bush in the US Congress on 11 September 1991, exactly 10 years after, on 11 September 2001, we'll have the 9/11 attacks, which we all know they were staged.
We just had a
Yeah.
discussion.
They were staged.
Dan Hanley on 9/11. Yes.
So they were staged by the Zionist American Empire. Like Nero in the ancient Rome, who burned Rome in order to blame the Christians, Bush II copied the same textbook of the Roman Empire. But what will happen starting with Bush I, the American empire is going to declare a global war on Islam. But at first, the Zio-American empire will go against Arab nation states. So they will have the first Gulf War, and then the second Gulf War. Then we'll have, before that, we'll have 9/11 and the invasion of Afghanistan. Then we'll have the destruction and the division of Sudan, destruction of Somalia, the civil war and division of Yemen, the killing of Muammar al-Gaddafi in 2011 by NATO. So, like General Wesley Clark has shown, that after September 11, 2001, the Zionist American empire thought that it was ready to give the final blow to the Arab world, which they did it. But the only country which held until 27th of November 2024 was Syria. But what the Americans did in the era of the Obama administration, when you, Shay, in the time you became very famous because you foresaw what was coming, the Zionist American empire made an alliance with Wahhabi Takfiri groups, and they unleashed this medieval beast against the Arab states.
I like that term, medieval beast.
Yeah, it is a beast.
I call them the Dajjal's warriors.
Yeah, but they're a beast. And this medieval beast was used against Egypt. They planned to divide Egypt, but later they changed their mind because they saw that Egypt could become much more dangerous divided. They unleashed this beast against Tunisia, against Libya, and against Syria. So Syria had to witness one of the most brutal wars in the modern history of humanity. It was a civil war, where these beasts of organizations like ISIS or Daesh, Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, and whatever CIA knows how to form and create, they started mass killing Muslims and Christians, raping people. And as we speak, as of today, the population of Syria, which before 2011 was around 22 million, if I'm not wrong, today only 10 million are left.
10 million.
12 million Syrians were forced to leave Syria. And 6 million of these are in Turkey, and around, if I'm not wrong, 3 million should be in Germany. So what happened is that Israel achieved one of its most impressive successes in modern history, because we know what the Zionists want. They want to create the Eretz Israel, or the Greater Israel. And this Greater Israel should extend from Iraq to the Nile River in Egypt. But Syria, after the 1979 peace treaty that Israel will have with Egypt, Syria was the greatest headache for Israel, because Syria was standing next to Israel. And after the toppling and killing of Saddam Hussein in 2003, Syria joined the so-called axis of resistance built by Iran, where we'll have Iran, Iraq, the Shia militias of Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Gaza, which are going to form the axis of resistance. The axis of resistance will come to the support of Syria during the bloody civil war from 2011 to 2016, 17, and Iran, together with Russia, will help the Syrian Arab Republic to prevail against international terrorism. But while Turkey, which was a major country, which joined the Zionist alliance in 2011 and supported the Takfiri groups to go and burn Syria, in 2015, Erdogan will come into a conclusion and he will understand that the Americans had cheated him. Because when the Turks joined the war against Syria in 2011 and 12, they were promised by the Americans that they will become the new pashas of Aleppo and Damascus. But what happened is that the Americans, they were not killing Assad, they were neither destroying Daesh. Their game was simple: divide and rule. Make every Muslim go and kill other Muslims while Israel will rule. So in 2015, when Turkey understood its mistake, it joined the so-called Astana Agreement, where Turkey, Russia, and Iran, they agreed to stabilize Syria. Erdogan fired his prime minister, Ahmet Davutoglu, and what happened few months later, the Americans, they are going to unleash the Gulenists and will have a coup against Erdogan in July 2016. Erdogan will be saved by Russia. The Russian Secret Service, who is going to understand what the Americans are up to, they are going to alert Hakan Fidan, the chief of MIT, or Turkish Secret Service, and thanks to Russia, Erdogan will be alive. But what happened is that with the start of the, I would call that probably the fifth Islamic-Israeli war, which started by Hamas on 7th of October 2023, when on behalf of Hamas will have Iran, Libya, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq join the war. When this war will start, Turkey, instead of joining this Islamic coalition, it just stayed and kept on trading with Israel. While Erdogan was denouncing Israel, Turkey was one of the main trading partners of Israel. During the more than 1 year Islamic-Israeli war, which happened from October 7, 2023 until 27 November 2024, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Yemen were all bombed by the Anglo-Zionist Empire. The British, they bombed Yemen, they bombed Syria with the Americans, they bombed Iraq, Israel the same, but the Axis of resistance responded back. And this war caused so much damage to Israel. Israel is a very small country. Yes, it is a military garrison of the Western Crusade, but it was never meant to fight long wars. Moreover, Israel does not have the strategic depth that many Muslim countries have. But during this war, Israel committed genocide in Gaza, where it killed probably as many as 200,000 Palestinians. It massacred and flattened Lebanon. It killed, according to me, the president of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi. Before this, the Zionists, they assassinated Qasem Soleimani. It killed Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, and Israel, thanks to the American and British intelligence, was able to kill many of the leaders of the Islamic resistance. But on 27th of November 2024, Israel finally signed an armistice with Lebanon, because during 2024, some 500,000 Zionists left Israel. So the Zionist project was in a crisis. Yes, Israel and the Americans, they had technological superiority when it came to the axis of resistance, but still, the Israeli state cannot sustain a long war. But then what happened? On 27th of November, when the axis of resistance was thinking that the war is ending in a stalemate, suddenly, from Idlib, the terrorist groups of Jabhat al-Nusra, which were supported and funded by Qatar and Turkey, were unleashed against the Syrian Arab Republic. And on 7th of December, 2024, if I'm not wrong, after capturing many of the cities of Syria, finally, the terrorists, they captured Damascus. In this moment that we're speaking, the government of Bashar al-Assad is no longer there. The emir of Syria is an international terrorist, Abu Muhammad al-Golani, otherwise known as Ahmad al-Shara, a person who is wanted even by the Americans, who is a listed terrorist by the United Nations and many other governments of the world. But the Americans, they have allowed him to be the puppet ruler of Syria. In this moment that we're speaking, Israel is bombing Syria, is destroying its infrastructure. It obliterated its air force, its navy, and few hours before it was bombing Damascus. Israeli tanks are probably 10 kilometers far from Damascus. And what Israel is doing, Israel in collaboration with Jabhat al-Nusra or Al-Qaeda, they are dismantling the Syrian Arab Republic. Israel is now colonizing Syria, and Netanyahu and Israeli leaders, they are very happy because while on 27th of November 2024, they didn't reach what they wanted in their war with the Axis of Resistance, what Turkey, Qatar, and Al-Qaeda did to them was the greatest gift given to the Zionists. And the new government established in Damascus by Abu Muhammad al-Golani have declared peace or neutrality towards Israel. So while Israel in this very moment is killing Syrians, is invading Syria, these so-called revolutionaries who made the revolution in name of liberating Syria from the dictator Assad, they are simply traitors.
Traitors.
They are selling Syria to the Zionists.
Traitors.
So they are the ground force of international Zionism. So while we know the Zionists and the Americans, they are afraid to send ground troops in Muslim countries, their ground troops are the Wahhabi beasts. So this was my historical summary, Shah.
Thank you, Dr. Olsi, for this extremely important exposure of the historical background. We want to turn now to the international politics involved in what happened to Syria's government. You'll have to excuse me, my cough. I'll do a little talking. You have to do most of the talking. Russia and Iran chose not to intervene to save the Syrian government. Why did they take this decision?
Well, from what I have read and heard from Syrian analysts and Russian and Iranians was that Iranians and Russians, they were ready to go and help Syria, but they found out that the Syrian army did not stand to fight. Aleppo was sold. The general who was in charge of defending Aleppo acted in the same way as the general who was in charge of protecting Baghdad from the Americans in 2003. In 2003, the Americans, they bought the generals whom Saddam had placed to defend Baghdad. They gave them American passports, money, they sent them somewhere to Florida, and this is how Baghdad was captured. The same thing happened to Syria. It seems that the Americans and probably Qataris and Turkish Secret Service was very successful on buying Syrian generals, and the Syrian army didn't stand to fight. So if you have followed the war in Syria from 27 November, at first the Russians, They were supporting the Syrian army. They were even bombing the terrorists. Iranians, they sent their advisors to Tehran, to Damascus, to personally meet with Assad. They even offered to send their army in Syria. Iraqis as well, they mobilized thousands of fighters. But when they saw that the Syrian army was not fighting and melted away, they came into a conclusion that we cannot go and fight when Syrians are not fighting.
The Syrian army has been fighting for the last 10 years. And they've done that with great courage, facing an enemy which was ruthless and barbaric. I call them Dajjal's warriors. And so while I am prepared to accept that there was some money being passed on and some people who sold themselves, perhaps there was more to explain why Russia and Iran chose not to intervene to save Bashar al-Assad. And as soon as that was clear to him, that they were not going to intervene, he then chose to hand over power peacefully and leave the country, which I think was a sensible thing that he did because it saved so much fighting and killing. I want to suggest that perhaps the plan was bigger than that, and that the timing of the attack on Bashar al-Assad in Syria, the timing was connected with what I call a window of opportunity before Trump assumed presidency on January 20th. And this was Biden seeking a moment in the sunshine to leave the presidency with something tangible. I've done it. And the American CIA and the Mossad were up to their neck in planning this and getting the attack to be launched at the time that it was launched. And when it succeeded, Biden actually claimed responsibility for success. This is my success. And, and Israel did the same thing. And Turkey could not hide her joy on what had happened. I want to suggest, Dr. Olsi, that the timing of the attack on Syria was connected also with Ukraine. That Trump had already broadcast 24 hours of the day that if I win the election, I become president, I can stop that war in 24 hours. And if January 20th were to come and Trump does not show to the American people something tangible about ending the war, the American people are going to turn against him very quickly. Very quickly. Because I don't think they voted so much for Trump as they voted against Biden and Kamala Harris. They voted against them. That's how Trump won the election. But Trump doesn't have a plan to win to stop the war. He doesn't have a plan. He's fishing. And perhaps, Dr. Olsi, the attack which was launched on Syria was meant to provoke Russia and Iran to intervene.
To open a new front.
And if Russia and Iran had taken the bait and intervened, then the noose around the neck of Ukraine would have been released. And Ukraine would have some breathing spell. And so I want to suggest that perhaps one of the reasons why Russia and Iran did not take the bait and they preferred to sacrifice Assad rather than take the bait was because they understood the bigger plan, the bigger picture, and it was too dangerous for them. Now that that is over, what does the future hold in store? What can we look forward to in a post-Assad Syria?
Well, I want to come back to what you were commenting right now, and I totally agree with you. I mean, the Russians understood very well what was happening in Syria. I mean, this was the plan B of the Zionists. After Israel failed to destroy Hezbollah and to totally crush Hamas, and Israel was really desperate, then the Zionist alliance decided to go against the weakest chain of the axis of resistance. And Syria was very important because Syria was a base for Iran and Russia. And we know that when the jihadists, they attacked Syrian cities, they were helped by Ukrainian officers. I mean, one of the reasons, coming back to your question, why did the Syrian army melt away was because they were faced with waves of drones which were coordinated and launched by Ukrainians. For people who follow Russia Today and other Russian channels, the Russian media have already alerted the public opinion since September 2024 that Ukrainians were going en masse in Syria, were training the jihadis, and they were getting ready. So the attack against Syria was not an attack against Palestine only. It was not an attack against Islam and Syria and Iran, but it was an attack against Russia as well.
Precisely.
And like you correctly pointed out, they wanted to trap Russia and Iran to turn Syria into a second Afghanistan. And while the jihadists, the takfiris of Jabhat al-Nusra will be unleashed by Turkey few moments after Netanyahu gave his speech about the ceasefire with Hezbollah, they were unleashed at the same moment. Bashar al-Assad went to Moscow and he met Putin personally. And he went on 28th of November. And after returning to Syria, probably he knew what was coming. And as we have seen, he had prepared himself to evacuate. But what the Zionist empire wanted to have Syria turn into a second Afghanistan for Iran and Russia, I think that what the Russians did by calling Assad to go to Moscow is that they called the Turks to come in. And we are going to see in the coming months that Syria will not have peace.
Syria will not have peace.
Syria is becoming a second Afghanistan where we will have everyone fighting against everyone.
Right.
We'll have the Turks, who they fell into the trap because now they have to maintain Syria. They have to stabilize Syria. Who is going to fund them? Qatar? For how long? So we'll have the jihadists supported by Turkey and Qatar, the Jabhat al-Nusra or Tahrir al-Sham. We'll have Egypt, the Saudi Muhabarat, who are especially Saudi Muhabarat, who is probably going to fund the ISIS. We'll have Israel, which is going to bomb and kill everyone. We'll have the Alevis, we'll have the Christians, we'll have Syrian patriots, nationalists. So Syria is going to become another Afghanistan. Now, when we see the bigger picture, because I was having this discussion yesterday with another TV station, is that some members of the axis of resistance, they are sad about what happened to Syria. But I told them, don't be sad, because chaos is not bad.
Because?
Chaos and anarchy is not always bad.
Okay.
I mean, chaos. And the Zionists, they thought that by toppling Bashar al-Assad, they're going to win. They're going to secure their borders. But it is not so. Because like Mao Zedong said, anarchy is really great. Anarchy helps you do more than when you have a stabilized government. Look at Iraq. Until 2003, Iraq was ruled by Saddam Hussein, and the axis of resistance couldn't do anything. When the Americans entered in Iraq and they toppled Saddam Hussein, you have, of course, you'll have Al-Qaeda and Daesh, but you'll have also the axis of resistance. So while the Zionist empire, they thought that by taking out Assad, they will weaken Russia and Iran, I don't think so.
Good. The Syrian regime, which has ruled over Syria how much, 3 decades or more, was an Alawi regime. And therefore, from our perspective, had no Islamic credentials. Alawi is far removed from Islam. Yeah. The positive thing about what has happened is that while we mourn the collapse of a government which was resisting Israel with credibility, we mourn the collapse of that government. But there is a silver lining that now there's greater clarity that the Alawi are gone. And as you just mentioned, that Syria would now become another Afghanistan. I was saying Syria is going to become another Libya, meaning a civil war. In Afghanistan, it is not so much a civil war, but a fight against the Americans. But in Libya, it's certainly a civil war. And we are now anticipating that that is what is going to happen in Syria. And the forces of Islam are now going to be able to emerge with greater clarity than was possible before. So this is one of the positive things which has happened. But now for the future of Syria, we're seeing Israel destroying Syria's military capacity to resist Israel. And it's going to take a long, long time before Syria can ever pose a threat to Israel. But I want to concentrate now on Syria's territorial integrity and what is likely to now happen with both Israel and Turkey attempting to grab parts of Syria, and how is Iran likely to respond?
Well, what happened on 27 November 2024, in my opinion, what Erdogan did is one of the greatest mistakes in his life. There was an agreement between Netanyahu and Erdogan, but we don't know the content of it, but history is going to tell us. But what happened on 27th of November, there was like what Hitler did with Stalin during World War II, the so-called Ribbentrop-Molotov agreement, when the Soviets and Nazis, they divided Poland.
Poland, yeah.
Yeah. So the situation in Syria is very similar to the Ribbentrop-Molotov agreement. So Erdogan and Netanyahu, they agreed to divide Syria. But we know what happened after the Ribbentrop-Molotov agreement. Hitler went and attacked Soviet Union. So what I foresee that is going to come is that Turkey is next.
Turkey
is next.
Next.
Yes. I mean, look, while Israel is bombing all Syria, and probably in the coming few weeks we might see Israel probably even invading Damascus or the areas around Damascus, because I mean the Zionists, they say it openly. They say that Damascus area and Syria belongs to them. We are going to see a major clash between the terrorist groups supported by Turkey, by fighters of the axis of resistance, and there will come a moment when Turkey will have to intervene to support its jihadists. Now, the reason why Turkey entered in Syria was because the Turks knew that Israel was supporting PKK and the Kurds. So Turkey sold Palestine for Kurdistan, to say it simple. Because the Turks, in their foreign and internal policies, they don't care about Palestine and Islam. They are like the Jean Turks. They are nationalists.
Nationalism, Turkish nationalism.
So while Erdogan talks about Islam and Palestine, if you see to what they practically do is that they take care only about their nationalist agenda.
Their God is a Turkish God.
They follow the path of Ataturk. So you can see from Turkey's intervention in Azerbaijan against Armenia, Turkey's intervention in Cyprus, the military conflicts that the Turkish Republic has done since its creation have never been about Islam, have been about pan-Turkism. And Turkey's entry into Syria was because they knew that the Americans and the Zionists, they wanted to create a Kurdish state, and Turkey entered in Syria in order not to allow this Kurdish state to be created. Yeah. But now what is going to come is that, like Stalin and Hitler, they had disputes about the way how they were going to divide Europe. In this moment, Turkey and Israel are in a direct conflict. Erdogan made the greatest mistake of his life by entering into Syria. Assad was the best person for everyone. He was the best for, not probably the best, but he was the good guy for the Iranians, for the Russians, but for the Turks as well. Because Syria was serving as a buffer state between Israel and Turkey. But now, and we know the arrogance and the power of the Zionists, mark my words, Turkey will be next. And when Turkey intervened into Syria, then I was reminded of your words, Sheikh, and the hadiths that you mentioned, where our Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Istanbul, Constantinople, is going to be invaded. I do not know who is going to invade Istanbul. Will it be the Zionist empire?
It's not Istanbul.
Yeah, you call it Constantinople.
لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُسْطَنْطِنِيَّةَ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ أَمِيرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. And he praised the army and he praised the commander. And that conquest of Constantinople is prophesied to take place 7 years after the Great War, which is around the corner. Another hadith speaks of 7 months. All right? And I don't think Erdogan is going to be on this side in that war. He and his people are going to be on that side. And the Muslim army will sweep them away. My Islamic eschatological analysis of that war is that we will conquer Constantinople so that we can return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs. That what the Ottoman Empire did in taking a Christian cathedral and converting it into a masjid was shameful, was disgraceful, and sinful. But you know my views on this subject. And when, excuse me, when we return Hagia Sophia to the Orthodox Christian world, that will cement the friendship and alliance between our two peoples. Dr. Olsi, my book, The Quran and Russia's Destiny, which I wrote after meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and he asked me to write on the subject. That book, we were waiting for the foreword to be written by Professor Alexander Dugin. He's finished that. He wrote a beautiful foreword. And that book should go to the printry here in Kuala Lumpur in the next few days, inshallah. And I am hoping and praying by Allah's kindness and grace that that book might help the process of re-educating our people. That there is a destiny ahead of us in which the two people are going to come together in friendship and alliance. And what is going to happen now in Syria, in the civil war which is coming, is connected with the alliance between Muslims and Christians, which is with which history will end. My cough is now bad, and if any of you have any questions to ask Dr. Olsi?
Before going to questions, I just wanted to add something about Dugin, because after Damascus fell, Alexander Dugin wrote on his Twitter profile that, if I can paraphrase it, that he was very upset with Erdogan, and he told him, "We saved you in 2016, and you stabbed us in the back, but we're not going to save you again." And also Dugin said that what is happening today in Syria and in Palestine, we have, if I'm not wrong, 3 or 4 eschatological views competing each other. We have the Zionists, who they think that this is their time and Mashiach will come. We have Muslims, who they think that this is Ahir Zamanit and Dajjal is coming. And we have the Christians, who are fighting to liberate Palestine and the Holy Land. So what Turkey did by, in a way, betraying Russia and the axis of resistance is probably one of the greatest mistakes in the history of the Turkish state. Like you said, the Turks, in this very moment, they are not on the side of Islam. They are on the side of the Zionists.
Turkey worships a Turkish God.
But the problem is that Turks, they don't want to learn from history. In 1918, Istanbul was invaded by the Zionist alliance until they... 18. Yes, after the armistice of Mudros. And the last Ottoman Sunni Caliph was taken hostage by the British. And they kept him as a hostage in Istanbul until they made sure that Ataturk is going to create his republic and will outlaw the caliphate and sultanate. So the Turks, they didn't learn from history. You can never trust the Anglo-Zionists. And Sunni Islam was killed by the Anglo-Zionist empire. The caliphate of Abu Bakr, which Hazrat Abu Bakr established, continued until 4th of March 1924, when Ataturk outlawed it. And Erdogan, which claims to be a pious Muslim, what he did, unfortunately, today, he is like Sharif Hussein, who in 1916 betrayed the Ottoman Caliphate and joined the Zionists. And we know what is the and we know what was the end of Sheriff Hussein.
£7 million they got.
And we know what was the end of Sheriff Hussein.
Yeah.
And we also know what was the end of Saddam Hussein, because
And Abdulaziz ibn Saud as well.
yes, but Israeli government, the foreign minister, who is now Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, has officially warned Erdogan that you are going to end up hanged like Saddam Hussein. So the Zionists today, they are using Turkey and Erdogan like they used Saddam Hussein against Iraq from 1980 to 1988. And in one moment, well, when they will no longer need him, they will make him face the same fate as Saddam Hussein.
Well, I think Russia has no alternative now but to re-examine our relations with Turkey and Erdogan. And the eschatological input into this is that there is this conquest of Constantinople which is coming, and I believe that is going to cement the friendship and alliance between the world of Islam that follows Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and the Orthodox Christian world led by Russia. And my book, the foundation of the book, is the declaration that Russia today is room of the surah to room of the Quran. All right, so we are we are now located at a moment in time when what is happening in Syria has not ended. There's more to come. There's likelihood perhaps of an attack on Iran. So we're going to stop today's session now, and hopefully that Dr. Olsi and I can come together again another 2 weeks or so when I come back from Indonesia, inshallah, when we know what else is happening, what else is in store in that part of the world after the collapse of the regime of Assad. So thank you, Dr. Olsi. Your scholarship is a treasure for the world of Islam, and may Allah protect you, and may Allah grant you more and more knowledge of the subject. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.